What is the difference between having free will and being both a mother and a father to your own self? Time travel. Or rather, different ways time travel is used in stories. People usually love plot twists, and time travel gives a very easy way for writers to add them. It's what Arcane did, and it almost ruined the story. I say almost because I still like the show. I like its characters, and I like how it ended. That being said, when I watched Arcane and saw Echo, Heimer, and Jace getting swallowed by the Wild Rune, I felt my spidey senses simmer. But when I saw them wake up in other realities, that simmer turned into a boil, because it outright told me two things. First, the story will have a plot twist related to time travel. Second, there are multiple universes that exist in the world of Arcane. The first one is just predictable and simply unsatisfying, and I immediately knew who the hooded figure was when Jace was LARPing his Elden Ring obsession in the gloomy future world. The multiple universes thingy, however, made my neighbors concerned enough to check on me because apparently bathrobe sleeves do not absorb enough sound to fully muffle screaming. And the reason for this vigorous, involuntary vocal discharge was because this made Arcane's story immediately lose its stakes. As a viewer, I now know that near infinite realities exist. I see what the world could have been without Hextech. I see what it will become if Hextech isn't stopped. If that's the case, there's a universe where the entire show of Arcane is one giant Prussian musical. Why would I care what happens in their reality now? If everything happens somewhere, what's the point of caring about what happens here? Many stories fall into this trap. Sometimes it's entire universes. Like Marvel. Multiverse and time travel were the downfall of MCU. Thanos collects all the Infinity Stones and the Avengers try to stop him. Classic. Then half the population dies, and it almost seems like Marvel might actually pull off a decent ending. But hold your horses, because in this universe, Christmas doesn't come early. It actually never does. Because the next movie then comes out, and everyone just travels back in time, Doctor Strange looks over 1 billion possibilities to defeat Thanos, and misses Ant-Man crawling up his purple asshole, but it's all good because Tony sacrifices himself for the good of the MCU. And the only question that circles in my mind is, why did I ever believe that a multi-billion-dollar company could pull off a satisfying ending? It's the writing equivalent of, it was all but a dream. Now in Arcane, Victor had a dream. A dream of going past physical and mental limitations to rid himself and humanity of suffering. But he becomes too powerful, almost like Thanos. And realizing that he was wrong, Victor now travels back in time over and over and over again to give Jace that runestone to stop him. This means that there are multiple alternate realities where Victor has tried and failed to make sure the Jace stops him. Alternate realities that he probably succeeded, like this one. He could have gone back in time and stopped his own birth, or the birth of Jace. He could have ended both of their lives at any point to stop Hextech. Being all-powerful, Victor could have done so many things to prevent all of this. We also saw Jinx trying to end her life multiple times, but each time Echo stopped her using his wild rune in a jar. Except that it didn't. In the way that we can assume Arcane's multiverse and time travel work is that each timeline creates a separate world.
Now hold the f*** up! So you're saying that Echo might have actually created a new timeline each time he say Jinx? That's just f***ed up.
Yeah, it would mean that Jinx died 5 times in a row while Echo kept reversing time. And there's 5 more universes where it all went to shit. That's just psychotic to even think about. Of course, you could argue that he's only affecting one timeline, in which case it could make sense, until it wouldn't. Here we run into a different problem. There's mainly 2 ways time travel works in fiction for it to make any sense. First is the multiverse, with different worlds and different timelines. We already briefly discussed it. And second, there's a single universe with a single timeline. Sounds more tame at first, but it becomes just as absurd when you add time travel to it. Take the movie Predestination, for example. The story hinges on the idea of a single timeline where time travel exists. But the movie takes this concept to its absolute extreme, and it turns out quite interesting. Take a look at the story graph. The story starts with John. I think it's here somewhere. John is a secret agent tasked to stop a terrorist from bombing New York in 1975. John goes back in time and meets a dude at the bar who used to be a woman. This dude tells John his story. Grew up in an orphanage as a girl named Jane, met a guy, had a baby was stolen from the hospital, after pregnancy was turned into a man due to complications. John takes this dude back in time to take revenge on the guy who left him pregnant when he was still a woman. Here, the dude meets the woman him and falls in love, has sex with her, makes her pregnant, and leaves. The woman gives birth to a girl. This girl is stolen by John. John takes her to the orphanage, only then to reveal that John was the dude he met at the bar all along, and also the terrorist he's been trying to stop this entire time. Confusing? Well, basically John is everything and everyone. He is him, his mother, his father, and his own daughter. Maybe even his grandfather, his granddaughter, his cousin, aunt, and that weird uncle whom his parents never left him with. Hell yeah! The only question then remains is if John is his mother and father, how was he ever born in the first place? Well, he wasn't, because the timeline is singular and circular. In the movie they call this the snake eating its own tail, or Ouroboros for any of you mystic nerds out there. Again, ridiculous, but that's what the movie's about, and that's why it works. Now, if this was the case in Arcane, the entire story would have gone very differently. There would have been multiple echoes running around at different times, each trying to stop Jinx from ending her life. And Echo would fail every single time until he would conclude that her death is simply inevitable. In Arcane, multiple universes and timelines exist, which we saw ourselves, and Victor confirmed it in speech.
In all timelines, in all possibilities.
And the multiverse theory says that a multiverse creates a new universe when a diversion in events occurs. This means that Echo creates a new universe every time he uses his time-reversing device. So in more universes than not, Jinx ends her life. This implies that Echo only cares about the world he's currently in. If that's the case, why didn't he just stay with Jinx in the world where Hextech was never created? Either the writers never thought about this, or Echo was diagnosed with the biggest case of "I can fix her" in the history of existence. So, taking all of this into account, how is Arcane's ending any special then? Well, it's not. Arcane's story focus was never about multiverses or time travel. And these concepts can turn a storyline like this into a story salad where nothing makes sense anymore. There are infinite possibilities where some characters survived, some didn't, none of them were born at all, or all of them lived happily ever after. Or were turned into a bunch of lizards by Singed and started the biggest social media company in the world.
Nice job, team. Did
Jinx shoot a massive rocket into the council chambers? Or was it a giant purple dildo? Vi fights Vander? Oops, Vander got one shot because my 0 and 10 bot lane, who are now spamming report jungle in all chat, fed enemy Vi 7 f***ing kills in under 10 minutes. Caitlyn actually snipes Jinx? Oh no, it appears she actually shot GFK in the f***ing head, and the CIA to this day have no idea why some British girl with a magical sniper rifle shot their f***ing president. Sounds absurd, but if the multiverse exists, every single one of these has probably happened. So despite all of this absurdity, why did Arcane do this? Why do time travel and multiverse? Well, it created a plot twist at the beginning of the show, with Victor being the stranger that gave Jace the runestone. Then, it was a good tool to showcase how powerful Arcane and Wild Runes actually are. And lastly, it pushed the story stakes to an existential level of threat. And in my opinion, the reason they did this is because they needed to tie several storylines together, which I think backfired for Arcane. Mostly because it created these infinite universes and all the logic just collapsed with it. But it also mismanaged the viewer's expectations. The show started off with political tension and elements of sibling drama and ended up deciding the fate of the entire world. Or billions of them. And I think it should have stayed with what it promised. Imagine if Victor just went to Zon and his powers fused with Chemtech or something just to create more tension between surface folk and the underworld. Absolutely no need for time travel in multiverses here. They simply don't belong in stories where the main focus is not these over-the-top philosophical concepts. It's very easy to overcrowd and overcomplicate a story with too many elements. Among creatives, this is known as putting a hat on a hat. One hat is enough. Now, don't get me wrong, time travel and multiverses definitely have their own place. It's really good at making absurd shows and movies, like Rick and Morty and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And if you want to write a story or run a D&D campaign with multiverses and time travel and all that, it's just probably best to make it about the absurdity of it. Or the entire story just centers around exploring these concepts. Now, could Arcane have done something to avoid all this? Yes. Not use time travel. Or just make sure time travel is not actually real. Now, what do I mean by that? Time traveling could be an astral projection into the past, for example. You go back as a ghost, can't interact with anything but see the events that transpired a long time ago. Not the future, of course, because no one knows what will happen in the future. Or time travel could be magic that changes people's perception of time. Or freezes someone or something in place, like a big army or a scary creature. Or just the way they did Echo in League of Legends. In the game itself, Echo's abilities make way more sense. His ultimate ability reverses time, but it only affects him and not the rest of the map, unlike in the show. If it worked like it did in the show, the whole map would be reversed every time Echo used his ultimate, which, as absurd as it sounds, was part of the original Echo's design in League of Legends. Until the designers realized that it was really f***ing dumb.
Oh boy. In 8 seconds, I'm gonna lose all my progress that I got from walking back to top lane. It was bad.
Sadly, the show's writers weren't graced with the same wisdom. But at the same time, I feel like they just cornered themselves with too many plot lines, rising stakes, and whatnot. Sure, it gave the show a plot twist and an existential threat. Good to get an initial reaction, but the more you think about it, the less it makes sense, and that's really unrewarding for people who deeply care about the story. But like I said at the beginning, I still like Arcane, and I think the writers did a phenomenal job. Apart from the multiverse and time travel nonsense, it's still incredible and easily in my top 3 shows of all time. I just really hope that whatever they work on next, that they don't do this time travel shit in the future anymore. We have enough multiverse disasters as there are. F*** you, Marvel. Instead, here's a video about why we still liked Arcane's ending, regardless of time travel.